And the screen we're sharing is there's only one screen here. And there we go. Okay, so what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about some structure, some basic things you can do to add some structure to your courses. There's been a lot of research. Some of it was discussed in Vijay Sathi and Kelly Hogan's book on inclusive teaching that we just did a reading group on, and they published a few papers themselves demonstrating the effect of structure on student learning. Some of this work, though, goes back 20 years or so. But the main point is pretty much every study that's been done found that the more support we give to students in helping them know what we expect from them, when things are due and reminders and so forth, the better off students are, that students tend to be more successful in the course. And one of the things that's really effective is that it narrows the equity gap, because the students who tend to have the students who benefit the most by providing reminders about deadlines, providing checklists and other things are students who are first-gen students, students who are Pell eligible, students generally from schools that do not provide as much college prep as others. And so the more support we can give students, the better off they are. And I know there's always this argument saying, well, students to be successful need to learn how to manage their time and deadlines and all those things. But there's a lot of research that suggests that prospective memory is something that none of us do all that well, which is why we put in reminders on our phones and we have all those calendar alerts and other things, and we can build a lot of that into our courses. And what I've noticed in my course evaluations the last few semesters is that one thing that students have commented on each semester is that they really appreciate the reminders that are built in. They really appreciate the checklist, and they really appreciate getting email reminders about due dates that are approaching. And so we're going to do just a few things showing how you can easily do that. So pick one of your courses. If you haven't started setting up your fall classes, pick one of your earlier classes, either from the fall or spring, that you might be using in the fall. And then anything you put in there, when you copy the course into the new version, will have some of these things. And we're going to build some simple intelligent agents, and we're going to look at checklists and other things first. So once you're in a course, go to Course Tools and go down to Course Admin. I'm already there. And the first thing we're going to look at are checklists. And these are fairly simple things. I have a number of them set up already. And basically what you do is, I'll just create a new one. And this will be, let me call it a module. This is for a summer class, which only has 12 modules. So I'm going to put in a module 13 checklist so I don't accidentally put it somewhere. And I'm going to save that. And so just create something for one of your course modules. And all this assumes that you have your course structured by learning activities by week or by some type of block that's based on time, which is generally how people have been recommending that we set up our courses for at least a couple of decades now. So, if you're not doing that, you may want to think about it. And then you create some categories. And the categories will depend on what you have students do in your class. And, you can create some fairly simple ones. One category might be simply to read. So we'll just call it read, and you can put a description in there, but just having it there with a reminder telling students they have to read something is somewhat helpful. And you might have another category. Let me put in, I got out of that checklist. Let me go back to my module 13 checklist. I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to put in another category. I'm going to put in another category of, let's say, complete. Or you can have categories, whatever you have students do, make categories for the broad activities, and then you can put specific items in there for each of those categories. So what we're doing is we're just working with a course that you already have, and we're just creating some simple checklists. And then what you can do is, I usually have 3 categories, but I think this will illustrate it. And then we're going to create an item. So let's say, each item, this is likely to be specific to your individual module, but if you have some things like, you're reading a chapter of a textbook, for example, you could just put the that chapter number. But let me just say, read chapter 13 of your text. And again, you can add notes to it, you can put links into it and so forth, but you don't even have to do that. So that'll be one, except that's not a category. Well, yeah, that would work. So by default, it used my last category, which is read. So I put chapter 13 of the text, and then you can put descriptions and notes there, but you don't even have to do that. And then you may also want to put a due date in. So let's say this is going to be due, we'll make it due tomorrow. We won't give students too much time, but you can put in a date and a time, which may be the close of the module. It could be some other date. And then if it's something like a reading assignment that doesn't have a calendar due date on the activity, you can also display it in the calendar, and that will get added automatically. Oh, I don't want to do this in my active course. So I'm not going to display this because this is my summer course that I'm in. And I don't want students to tell them to read chapter 13 by tomorrow. That just wouldn't be very nice. But if you have things like quizzes and other things that already have due dates that show up in the calendar, you don't want to click on display in calendar here, because then they'd get 2 reminders of it, which I suppose wouldn't be worse, wouldn't be the awful thing, but they'd be right next to each other and it's just kind of redundant. So if it's something that students are doing outside of class, or it's some activity such as reading, or if you want them to participate in a discussion, for example, before the deadline approaches, you can put in a reminder where the first post in the discussion is due at a certain date. And then if you have a due date for the whole discussion, that will already be there in the calendar if you set it up that way. So basically put in the due dates either here or on the activity itself if there is an option for a due date, and that will automatically go to the calendar. So I'll save this, and now we have a reading item here, and let's say we want to have them complete something, and we're going to put a new item here, and let's say they're going to complete quiz. By default, it still says read, but I'm going to change that in a second. But let's say I want them to complete quiz 13. And then you could put in notes, you can put in reminders of other things, you could link to it, but you can just simply save that. And again, I'll put in a due date tomorrow, but I'm not going to put that in the calendar because that would just, confuse my current students. And once you've saved it, you can then save, and you put in all the things you want students to do in that course module. I usually organize it by weeks, but however you organize your material, you could put all the due dates in there and save and close. And that has created a checklist. However, creating the checklist doesn't do much until you actually activate it. So what we're going to do is once you've created a checklist, you're going to go into content, and let's say I don't have a module 13, but I'm going to stick it temporarily in module 12. And in module 12, under existing activities, there's going to be the option of a checklist here. Somewhere in here, there's an option for, there it is. Okay. And it will show all my checklists there. And I'm going to put the module 13 checklist. It's going to go to the bottom. I normally, at first there's already a module 12 one there, but when I first did it, I put it at the bottom. Students didn't always see it. So what I've been doing in the spring semester and well, actually, this was last summer, this course was created. What I was doing last fall and the summer is to move it right up at the top of the list of activities, right after the module overview that describes in more detail what students are expected to do. And then when students see it, all the dates in there will automatically get added to their calendar. And I don't have any of those. So I'm going to delete this, but that's basically what you do. And the really nice thing, I'm going to delete both the topic and any content. There's not a lot of content in there. But now if I go back to, the nice thing is once you create your first one, it's really easy to create others. And that's how I pretty much created all of these. So if I go to my checklist, well, I should have done it with module 13, but let's say I want to suppose there is now a 13th module and it has a similar structure to module 11 or module 12, all you have to do is copy it. And once you've copied it, it will generate a new one, which will say copy of module 12. You rename it. And so I'm going to edit this. And the first thing I'm going to do is rename it. So this will now be a module 13 checklist. And this will have my module 12, which was actually the thing that I'm asking students to do, where I have them complete this book uses an adaptive learning book from McGraw-Hill. So it's a smart book assignment. There's some mini lectures I wrote. And there's the discussions where I ask them there's 2 discussions they work on each week. One is a low stakes metacognitive cafe discussion where they share learning strategies. And the other is a content discussion that ties the material they're learning to things in the world where they try to make connections between what they're learning and real world issues or debates and so forth. But what I asked them to do is to post their initial posts in each assignment at least 2 days before the due date, because when I didn't do that, everyone tended to post at the last minute. And then people were, there was always 1 or 2 students who want to post and get their work done early in each module, and there was nothing for them to reply to. So I've been requiring them to post at least 48 hours before the module closes. So I have that there, and basically, if I wanted to update this for module 13, all I would have to do is click on each of these. Let's say here, and I would just click on it and I just update it to say module 13, and I update the due date for, and so forth. So that's, it's really, once you create the basic structure, you can duplicate it, copy it, and update the contents for each of your course modules. And it only takes just a few minutes to do that. And then you add that to that module. And so, and then again, this is something that doesn't automatically show up in the calendar because it's an external resource. So I'll save it and that will now be there. Well, once I add this checklist to the module, it will then be in this fictitious module 13. But again, I don't really want to keep this one. So that's a really quick introduction to, and save and close. And then I'd add that to module 13 directly. But again, the checklist will only display if you go to the module where you want them to appear and you add them directly. And so let me get rid of that one. Why I should have had a delete option. Maybe it's up at the top. Oh yeah, there it is. So here, I'm going to delete this whole thing. And again, you can reorder it if you want to change the order. But what I'd recommend is using a similar structure for any checklist, so that way things will be in the same order. Students will get used to it. And one of the goals is to make sure that students are focusing on learning and not trying to look up deadlines or due dates and other things, because it's right there in front of them, right in the course calendar when they open it up, or here. And then students, with a checklist, students can check off the work as it's done, and they can track their own progress. So that could lead to a little bit more self-directed learning and so forth, and help students become, more cognizant of what they need to do each week, and perhaps encourage them not to wait until the last minute. Although, students will tend to wait until the last minute with a lot of work, as we all do. So, and I forgot to actually delete it. One more time that I'm going to delete. Oh, that's the items. Why is there no option to delete this? Oh, maybe it's here. No. Okay, let me go back to the checklist option. And more actions. Here we go. You choose under more actions and delete. I'm going to delete this one and it's gone. But again, once you decide what you want to be on the checklist, you create it and then you just copy it and add it to all of your course modules. Does that seem, any questions on that?
I have a question, John.
Sure.
So can you go back into your, under content, go into one of your modules?
Sure.
I'm nosy and curious. So when you click on your module overview, what do you have Does that also have the same?
It
I
does.
usually copy the stuff from my. Okay. the
So
required
I've used
documentation.
an accordion file there. So there's an overview just of what the topics are,
Yeah.
the learning objectives for this, and then what the required tasks are, which are very similar, you know.
Okay.
But they don't have the option of checking it off when it's due here, you know. So they can look
Okay,
at,
so they can actually check it off.
they can check it off in the checklist, and you can check using intelligent agents to see if they check things off. And then you can, when they complete it, you could set up an automatic reminder saying you have not completed. I don't do that, but you do have the option of checking whether all the boxes on the checklist have been checked and triggering an agent that would then notify the student and remind them that they haven't done this. Because honestly, I don't really care if students check the boxes or not, as long as they get the work done. But you know, a nice thing about this is it will put calendar due dates in for items that might not otherwise have a calendar due
Right,
date.
like the reading.
It might be readings outside of class, you know, or if you're teaching a face-to-face class, there may be books that they're reading that are not in here. And this way you can put in due dates for when that work should be completed. You could ask them to watch a video or other things that might not be, well, videos you might probably embed a link into, but you know, it could be attend this lecture at this due date or whatever, you know, or something similar. So it's a really nice feature, and students have said that they wished all their, every semester, well, since last summer, students have said they wished all their faculty use the checklist because they found it really helpful. And you can link the content to it as long as it's content within Brightspace. So you could embed links to the quizzes and so forth. So yeah, so this is, and once you set it up, if you know, you can, if you're going to use a similar structure the next time you teach it, if you use the date manager, which works so much better than Blackboard's ever did, all the due dates that you have in there will automatically be updated. So, you know, you just set it ahead 364 or 5 or 6, whatever the adjustment is to get to the next year's schedule or more, or if we shifted to a week earlier or later, you just make an adjustment and all of your due dates will automatically change. So you might not have to change any of the checklists if you're using the same text, the same readings and so forth, or at least the ones that are the same will automatically start off that way.
Hey, John, where does one find this magical date manager? Because that sounds really helpful.
The date manager is, I just used it actually for my summer course, and I've only used it once. I think it's right down under, is it under tools? Let me see.
It's up,
Okay, where was it?
yeah, so at the very top of the screen, or like.
Well, those are,
No, it's like versus managed dates, go down to site resources.
Oh.
Last item.
Oh, I see it. Okay, site
Yeah.
resources.
yeah, and that works really nicely. So yeah, if we click it, I'm not going to change the dates in my course because this is an actual live course. But basically you just, you know, you can, oh, right here, you check everything and then you can do a bulk offset dates. And so, you know, you just shift everything ahead by a year, by that many days, however many days it is, you know, in leap, we shift by one day except in leap years. So, but if you put that in, you'll see the new dates. And if you messed up, you just shift it ahead or back a day or two. And it does a remarkably good job of doing that.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on checklist? Okay.
Actually, sorry,
Yeah,
one
sure.
more quick question. Could you just say a little about how you introduce it to students? Do you just say, hey, here's a helpful tool you might use? It sounds like you don't require them to use it. I'm curious about how you kind of maybe motivate students to use it, or if they just do. They're really,
They just do, but I've used it in my face-to-face classes, my online classes. In my face-to-face classes, I've shown it to students. In online classes, my plan is to put in a short video going through the course and showing them all the things, which is something I did every semester for online classes up until last summer, because I was one of the people in the pilot, and I think we had like a week and a half or 2 weeks of access to the course before it started. So I didn't get a chance to record it. I was struggling to get the course open on time. And last fall was kind of similar. Last spring was kind of similar. I've been rebuilding my courses, and I haven't had time to put together a video for that. But what I plan to do in the fall, at the start of the semester, I'm hoping, is to create a video for my online intro course, and telling them about it. But students didn't really seem to need much help
Yeah.
with it. They just saw it there, and they found it helpful, just as a reminder for them.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this? Okay, now the next thing I'm going to talk about, and this one's pretty simple, because I want to spend more time on intelligent agents because there's a lot of power there. But one of the things you may have noticed when I went through this was just an accordion file. And it's just a really convenient way of organizing material in a compact way to make it easy for students to access material. Because when we moved from Blackboard to Brightspace, in Blackboard, it was really common if you had a number of resources of a given type, like I'd have a folder for YouTube video links, or I'd have a folder for readings and so forth. That would be a subfolder. In Brightspace, you can do that, but it's strongly discouraged because it's designed primarily for mobile, and those subfolders just don't work as well when you're using, the mobile app. So it's a more flat structure. So basically all the material, or the best design, and this is what Brightspace encourages, is just to go, well, let me go back to the module, is just to have everything listed in the order in which students do it. So if they go through and they open up one page, then they can just go on to the next activity by clicking the forward button. And then they could go to the next activity by clicking the forward button. And so everything is linear. But if you have a lot of material, that could be a really long list. So if you have a series of readings, or if you have some videos or supplemental resources, using accordions is a really easy way of doing that. And basically, how many people have used accordions? Okay, so a couple of people here have. I'm not able to see the people online because we just have the one screen here. But let's just go through it really briefly. And what I'm going to do is go back to content, and I'm going to use this module just to demonstrate it. I use it for a number of things. I use it for videos. I use it for, well, let me just show you how I've been using it so far in the class, because I didn't do all this the last time, and I'm rebuilding it section by section. But I have the module overview in each module, which I did use as an accordion last year. But I also have some mini lectures, which I've been updating and over time. But basically what happens here is that's just an accordion where there's a number of things. These are optional readings if students just want some supplemental things, some notes I put together on these things, which focus mostly on those concepts that they have the most difficulty with. So they get to see some, there's a lot of things here where there's use of graphs and things that students tend to find more challenging in economics classes. So it's just kind of a simple introduction, and that makes it that some people find to be a little more helpful. But instead of having one page for each of these, putting in an accordion folder just makes things a lot easier, more compact. And again, students don't need to use it, but it's an option. So to create an accordion folder when you're in, let me go back to the overall, the top of the module. All you need to do is create a file or web page. They change the name here. And let's just call this, I'm going to call this junk so I don't accidentally leave it here. If it's a brand new page, you can start by, and that's probably the best strategy here, I'm going to create an accordion. The tab option works the same way, except there's tabs across the top instead of that expansion as you move down. And it starts with this. And by the way, I would encourage getting rid of that image and either replacing it with something else or just getting rid of it, because students see that on every single page which is created with one of these. I've been creating my own images, and that takes a little bit of time, but once you do them once, it's, for a course, it's not so bad. But in any case, you start here and you've got choices of accordions from 1 to 6 in length. If you want longer ones, there's 2 ways of doing it. One is you could start with, let's say, a 6 accordion, then you could go in and edit the HTML code. And let's say if you have 9, you could just grab a block of 3 within the HTML, copy and paste it into the HTML, just copy and paste it down lower if you're comfortable with HTML editing. The other thing you could do is just put a 3-element accordion right below a 6-element accordion and will look like a 9-element accordion file. But most of the time, 6 items will be enough. And all that you do is, let's say you have a 4-element accordion, you just get rid of the other ones here. So if you want a 4-element accordion, you go up to where the 4-element one is, and you just get rid of everything after that, leaving, of course, the Oswego logo, because we've got to maintain the brand and so forth. And you just go to the top of it and remove everything immediately above. And I'm going to get rid of that image too. There. And so now there's your accordion, and you just put in the titles for each of the header sections. And then if you have other pages that you want the content to come from, just paste it right into there. So you can copy and paste pretty much any HTML formatted page right into there. And it will, well, let's say this is going to be on topic 1. Oops, what did I do there?
That happens a lot.
So yeah, Control Z is your friend. There we go. So I'm just going to, I went outside of the box. So, so this will be topic 1, and this will be topic 2. And you could leave 2 or 4, but you don't need to do that. Let's say topic 2. Well, we'll leave it topic 12 because we don't have to be on topic. We'll go to 14, just etc. So you put in whatever topics you want, and I'll just leave it like that. And then you just either type in the material, or if, for example, you wanted to put in a video, you would, let's say it's a YouTube video. Well, let me just jump over to YouTube for a second, if I can. There we go. It's being covered by. Why am I not? Oh, there we go. It's being covered by the controls here. So I'm just going to jump to YouTube for a minute. So if you do want to embed a YouTube video, and this is a really common use of accordions, by the way, let's say we want to, how crime works. Okay, let's say I have no idea what that's all about, and I'm not sure I want to, but well, all you do is you go in here, you go to share, you grab the embed code. I mean, you could put in a link, but the embed code is just kind of a little bit nicer to create a cleaner, more direct view. And then we go back to here. Once you grab that embed code, oh, that was when I was having trouble, because it turns out that Celta Oswego doesn't have an account on Brightspace, which is what I had to log into to get the Zoom account running here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go in, except now I'm going to edit the HTML code, but you could do it with this, but it's just, you know, if you're comfortable with it, that's not what I wanted. Where is the HTML? It's that less than, the less than and greater than sign. And why am I not seeing it?
There was an insert code option there.
Was there in with this?
On the plus sign that you just did on the down.
Okay, you can do it that way. I have never done that, but let's try that. I usually go in with the less than greater than signs next to each other. That will take you right into the HTML. But let's say we're going to put the embed code in there, and that should work, I hope. And except, well, let's try it. We'll check. Yeah, that didn't work. Okay. Oh, things don't go right when this is something I do like multiple times each week. We're going to get rid of that, and then
It was set to JavaScript. Maybe you can
it's not a JavaScript. It's I want to embed the HTML code directly, and let me do it for topic 12, and let's see. And somewhere up here, there should be the embed code option. let me, I'm going to make the screen smaller for the font just a little smaller for a second. And it's still not doing it. Well, let's try insert stuff. And I want to insert embed code, enter embed code. This is not how I do it, but it should work. So you take the embed code, the iframe code that came from YouTube, and then you just type next. And then there's a preview of it, which is what we want. And we're going to insert that. And now this is how it will look. This is going to just be some ugly stuff up there, but I don't want to, if I had the access to the HTML, I just edit it out and delete it. But well, I can just delete it like this. So now what's going to happen is when let's just hop over to, students want to have, this is in a module that is hidden, and I don't want to make it open to see it in student view because it would show it for my students. But what would happen is it would look like the other accordions where the titles would be topic 1, topic 12. And then when they click on topic 12, it would show the list of videos. And that can be a really effective way of organizing material for students. Sorry about that little detour. Does that make sense? Does that seem reasonable? I'm going to leave this. I don't really need to save this particular document. In fact, let me get rid of it before. Oh, I guess because I hadn't saved it in the first place, it never stayed. If it did, my students will notify me when we get to module 12 later this summer. Okay. They will wonder about that. So in any case, accordions and the tabbed options are really nice ways to organize a lot of material compactly, where students can see what's contained there and just expand it, and then all the content is there. And it's easier for them to see everything when you use accordion files or tab files.
I actually, in my face-to-face classes, I use the tabs, and then I do like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So,
yeah, it depends on the material you're organizing, and if it's organized by date, that would be a really simple way of doing it. You know, if it's by content type, you know, either one could be used and either one could work. But it's just a nice feature that we didn't have in Blackboard, and it's especially nice given that, you know, the goal is to have this flat design structure so people can just tab from one page to the next using those arrows when they're within it.
Lost there. Are you setting up the accordion first, or you, like I always set up the linear structure, and then, so mine are not in an accordion, but they just go 1, 2, 3, 4 throughout the day, that module.
Yeah, so what I did is I had the linear structure. Some of it was imported from Blackboard. Most of it has had to be redone because some of it was, you know, older. But when I've created the documents first, what I've done is I created another file. What happens is if you convert a file to be an accordion, it will delete everything that's there. So it's easier to create it first, and you could give it a new name. And what I've been doing is I've been opening a nice thing about Brightspace, which worked for the last year or two of Blackboard, but didn't work before that, is just open up my course in 2 different browser windows. And then I would have the original files in one browser window, and then I'd have the accordion in the other. I'd go into as long as it was all formatted, I'd just go over to the original file and do a Control A to copy the whole thing, or Command A, and then Control C or Command C, go over to the new place in the content part of the accordion and just do a Control V or Command V, and it just puts it there. So if you already have the stuff, you just copy and paste from one document to either the tab or to the accordion content portion of it. And that's probably the easiest way of doing it. But just be careful not to create an existing content window into an accordion, because it will, without either copying the material or having it stored in another place. Although if it's a course you've rolled over, you can always import that from an earlier version, which I've had to do once in a while. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. Could you just go back to how you put in a file once it's set up as the accordion template, like when you were doing the HTML code? I was trying to do that on mine.
Yeah, you should see, and I don't know why I'm not seeing it. There's that less than greater than sign next to each other, which is basically takes you into the HTML. Are you seeing that on yours?
No, but I never do it. Like I'm old school. I just put the links, but I do like looking at the video better. You want to hear?
I was just, no, see, now I see the lost.
Okay, let's go through that process again. So I'm going to create a file and I'm going to create, and let's just say I'm going to use a document template, and let's say it's going to be the accordions. And I'm going to get rid of this thing just because it's all over the place. And let's say it's going to be, let me get rid of everything except for the 6-element accordion. You know, and even just a 1-element accordion is a nice way of making things really compact if, say, you have a file that has a whole set of videos in it. Okay, so let's say I'm going to go out. So here's the accordion. Let's say this is topic 1. And in here, let me go to, let me open up another tab. And that should take me right into Brightspace. I'm already authenticated, so I'm going to go to this course. This is summer 2023. I'm going to go to my, there we go. Summer 2023, I'm going to go here. And let's say there's a file I want to put in there, and I'm going to go to my content and just grab a file from a different module because some of them were not in accordion folders yet. They will be. I'm going to go, say, to module 5, where I don't think I use accordions for those mini lectures. So what I do is if I have the file already, I just go in, I edit the file, I put it into edit mode, edit HTML, and then just do a Control A. Oops. While I'm in the box, I was outside of the box, Control A, Control C, and then I would go back over to the accordion and just delete that default text, paste it in, and now it's right there. Does that make sense? And then I just put in a title for that. And, you know, that's an easy way of moving content into accordions if you already had it as a separate file. And let's say if I wanted to go over and grab a different one, this was mini lecture 5.1. If I wanted to go over and grab 5.2, I could jump ahead to that. And I, again, go into edit mode here, edit the HTML, and go into the document itself, do a Control A or Command A, Control C, and then go over here. And this would be, say, topic 2, which is down a ways because it displays all of it, but some of these files are longer than others. So let's say that's topic 2. I would go in here, just simply delete the default text, paste it in, and that puts that whole text in there.
So I do actually still have that plus sign, minus sign. You're missing like a second row. When I pull up,
Yeah.
there's a second row that appears.
And I maybe there it is. So this is how you would edit. If you want to go in and edit the HTML, which is what I normally do, you can do that. Again, if you're not comfortable with doing that, don't, because most things you can do without it. But the place where I do it is if I want to add something to an accordion that's already created, I don't want to go back and copy and paste everything. You can go and grab a block of that, put it in, and just, you know, put in your text and the titles. Or again, you can always just stack accordions after each other if you want to go beyond the size of your current accordion. And it will look as if it's all contiguous, if it's all part of one. So, okay, so does that answer questions on this? Okay, so, you know, these are things just making it a little bit easier, but what's really powerful in Brightspace are the intelligent agents. It gives us back half of the capabilities we used to have with Angel in terms of agents and so forth, which is vastly better than what we had with Blackboard, which was like a step back 20 years. So you would go to course admin, and we're going to leave this site because I didn't save that. And we're going to go to course tools, and then again down to course admin, and then go to intelligent agents, which are right under communications. And I have some, and I'd suggest that you just try setting up a couple of the ones I have here. And one has already been activated. This is my summer course. But one a really simple one to do is a login reminder. And what I would suggest that what you can do here is just click on, when you're there, click on new agents and just try this one. It's really simple. You just create it once and you can set it up to repeat every week, this was the first agent I created. I created make it easy for me to remember, I called it a login reminder. Students don't see that. The description, again, is a weekly login reminder, so I can see if I have multiple reminders in this, you can. The categories are optional, but it's convenient perhaps to group them so that you know how you've set them up and so forth. So I just called this participation. You can leave that blank or you can add a category. Don't enable the agent yet. Wait until you got everything set up. But basically, what you can do is you can schedule it. I have mine set up to trigger weekly. You could have something going daily, I believe. The options are, it could be every hour if you really wanted to harass your students, but then the spam filters would probably catch you. We had an issue years ago with someone at Finger Lakes Community College who set up an angel agent that was triggered to run every hour. And it was just cascading, and it brought the whole system down because he had a very large class, and well, it was a long story, but they turned off agents for a few months and after that because they were worried other people might do that. So you pick when you want it to run, the frequency of running. And I have it run every week, just, in case students disappear, you'd expect them to log into a course where there's things due every week, at least once a week. Pick a day that's reasonable, and then pick a time, put in the start date for it to run, and then the end date for it to run. And then I would suggest make it for all users visible in the class list. Users with specific roles could be if you have mentors, if you had TAs, or if you had other roles in the class besides students. For now, I think making it for all users visible. I mean, if you choose a specific roles, you've got all these things that are throughout SUNY, and there's hundreds of them. And we don't really need that. So just click. In SUNY, there's something like 600 different roles. They're not all listed here. But I know that because I've become an administrator for this demo thing for this other project. So it's a bit of a challenge at times, but all users visible in the class list. And then, if you just want to do something to remind students to log in, you could say whether they've logged in or whether they've accessed the course. In practice, there's not much of a difference, except login means that they've logged into Brightspace, and you're probably more concerned with whether they've accessed your course. So I set it up for whether or not the student has accessed a course in the last 7 days. You can set however many days you want, you notice there's the option of either for students who have not accessed a course or students who have, then you could set, you could say, congratulations on checking in the course this week, but that could get a little bit overwhelming for students if that happens every week. You could set release conditions where this is only triggered if certain things happen or if other things are conditioned on that. For something like this, you probably don't want that. And then if this is something where you only want to do something once with many activities, that's what you choose. But if this is going to be something that happens every week and you're checking, you want to take the action every week when they haven't logged in, just to send them a reminder. And then what I do is I choose to send an email when the criteria are satisfied, basically if they haven't logged in. And here, this is a tricky part. You can find examples online, but the key is it should go to the initiating user in curly braces, okay? Because that will do it for every student for which the condition applies. And that's what you would use in any emails that are going to be generated subject to one of the conditions, okay? So each student who triggered this event will get a personal email to their Oswego email address, okay? And then I send a copy, you don't have to, but I send a copy, a blind carbon copy to myself. So I see who is getting the emails so that I'm notified as well as the students are notified. And then this would be the email content. So I call this an Echo 350 reminder because they're in that course. And then the other thing is you can personalize this. And this is similar to the replace string that you can use with announcements and so forth, except again, it's not just the first name, it's the initiating user first name. So the initiating user would be the email address for the students, and the initiating user first name, again in curly braces, would put the first name of the students who's receiving this in the email. So this was a pretty simple thing I wrote, and it's only gone to, I think, 2 or 3 students since I first created this in each of my courses, and generally they were students who had disappeared early on, or sometimes disappeared later. And then if you want, you could put in attachments, you could upload content, and you could record a little video message that would go on and so forth. But I just send it out like this, and then once it's done, click on enable the agent, and it will start working the first time it hits that beginning date. So you can set it in August or September or something for your course. But it's a really simple, intelligent agent that at least lets you know who's disappeared. And if you have a class of like 400 students, this can be kind of helpful in keeping track, because it's hard to keep track of all that just looking through the logs of the course. But there's so much more you can do.
Can I ask a quick question, John?
Sure.
Will they get an email to their Oswego email account with this, or does it go to like a message within Brightspace?
Both. It will go to Brightspace, but the Brightspace messages automatically get sent out to the Oswego email address.
And will it automatically get sent out to them whether or not they've opted in to having announcements go to their email?
Can they disable? Well, this isn't an announcement. This is an email.
Great.
And I don't think there's the option to disable that.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks.
I mean, in Brightspace there is, but I don't believe it's been enabled in SUNY. So I think that's something that I know early on. I know last summer and fall that was turned on by default, and it automatically goes to the Oswego address rather than what other emails they may personally use. And I'm pretty sure that condition has stayed the same.
Okay, thanks.
Now, these are things, this is just a simple thing. And again, there's other options though. You can, and we'll go through those. So let's go, let me look, does everyone have this set up or tried? And the key things to remember is that initiating user and initiating user first name in curly braces. I don't know if the capitalization is required, but that was in the example, so I just used it. Usually it doesn't check that, but it's probably not a bad idea to use it anyway. It makes it more readable. Okay, so this is one agent that I've set up, and there's lots of others. For example,
I missed at the very bottom. If the email format, is it HTML or plain text?
it
Doesn't matter.
it doesn't, it would only matter if you were going to use things like boldface or italics or put in some special HTML. If you're going to have a bullet list, if you're going to, for example, send a list of, if you were going to send a list of resources that students might use if they were struggling, then you might have bullets embedded. So if you want formatted email, make it HTML. In general, if it's plain text and you choose HTML, it'll go out, it'll still look the same either way. It's just you can dress up and add more to HTML email. Okay, any other questions on this? This is the simplest one, but the most powerful ones are other things here. So let's say I'm going to look at the discussion module 12 reminder. I mentioned that I have 2 discussion forums set up each week, and this one I just called I created a category of discussion reminders, and this one has to be done for each module because it's queued to a specific event. but I wrote it in a fairly generic way for the messages to receive full credit. Be sure to post by, by 11:59 tonight. And this one's not enabled yet. I've been enabling them as I double check them and so forth. And this would be done as a one-time thing. I'm not sure why that wasn't set, but this will be sometime. Oh, this is going to be sometime in, I'm going to not mess with that one. I'll just exit from it. But I want it to run on a specific date, whatever date it is that that material is due. So I'll remove the schedule from it now. But so it could be the same things that you had up here, but you can also tie it to a wide variety of things within the course. And I have it set where there's 2 discussions due each week, and they have to post at least initially in each of them 2 days before the deadline. So I just set it up this way, but you could create any number of conditions, and the conditions could be and or. So it could be the message will go out if a whole set of conditions holds, which could include grades or their overall course grades or other things, or it could be if any of the conditions hold. Now, in this case, because I have 2 discussions, I wanted to go out for students who haven't participated in either one of them. So I just use the or condition here, basically. So any condition must be met. But if I wanted to make it more restrictive so that, if they were in a particular group and they hadn't done something, or if, et cetera, you could set it up so that all conditions have to be met for the trigger. It's basically an and or an or logical structure. Okay. And then the conditions, though, are incredibly flexible. So the conditions types could be whether they've submitted something to a Dropbox folder, to an assignment folder. So if you have an assignment that's due, at midnight on a certain day, you could send a message out at 8 in the morning saying you have not yet submitted to a specific folder. You could also have it set up so that to remind them that they've received feedback on their submission. So after you grade things, you can have a trigger set up to automatically notify them that you provided feedback on their assignment. If there's a rubric, you can trigger this by a score below or above a certain threshold. You could have one that goes out if the score is above a threshold, congratulating them on the good work, or if the score is below that threshold, you could send them a note saying that there's some work they need to do on this, and to pay attention, to look at the rubric and look at their feedback, and if you allow resubmission, encourage them to resubmit it. Now, if you're using awards, like if you gamified your class and you're using a Brightspace awards, there's like badges, you could set it up so that whenever they complete a certain set of things, so that it triggers an award, so they've mastered a certain type of activity or content, you could notify them that they can now pick up their award in that component. And here you could have something going back to the checklist. If they've completed everything on the checklist, if they completed specific items on the checklist, or if their checklist is incomplete. And again, I'm not forcing students to use the checklist, but most of them have noted that it's been helpful. You can also do it if they've triggered something that enrolls them in a group. So you can have group enrollment conditioned on certain scores or something similar. You can, again, set up competencies. Those aren't there yet, but Brightspace has that capability. And I'm using the discussion component, but I also have one that's based on their final grade. So the final grade drops below, say, a D or a C minus. It just notifies them that the score has fallen into a range where they should be concerned about passing the course, and to contact me, or to since this is an online course, contact me either during my office hours or to set up a Zoom meeting. And it could be based on a score on a quiz, or whether they completed a survey or not. So any of those things could be used to trigger an email. And it's a pretty powerful feature, and it's a nice way of reminding students when workers do. And the other nice thing about it is it takes a bit of time to set up the first one, but once you've set up one of them, I'm going to exit out. Once you've set up one of them, you have that option of copying it. And if you copy it, as long as you've written in a sufficiently generic way in each module, so that says this module is due tonight, and all you have to do is change the due date and the triggering event, and and so forth. And that's all automatic once it's been made active. So make sure you have the dates first and so forth. And while you're in there, one of the things you can do, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let me, I meant to use a drop down. Let's say if in here, one of the options is you could run it yourself. If you forgot to make it active, you could still do a run now. I'm not going to do that because no one has completed module 12, but you could also do a practice run, which would, well, that's going to pop up the names of the students. So because I probably don't want to have the whole list of names there, but you could do a practice run on something just to see how many, once you've created the agent before you enable it, you could do a practice run just to make sure it's working in the way it's expected and to see what names pop up. And it will tell you which students meet the criteria without actually sending the email with the practice run option.
That
So.
was my question, because it all seems great, but I'd just be worried about sending out things correctly and then confusing. I'm always just paranoid about creating more confusion by trying to automate something.
Well, again, the nice thing is if you've set this up and it's triggered on particular discussion forums, and if you change your discussions every semester, just use the same name for the discussion. Like I have module 12 content discussion. And as long as I keep that name, it could be any topic that they discuss that semester. But as long as I've used that date manager, all the dates get ported forward and all those messages and all those intelligent agents stay the same. So, and once you create the first one and you see that it works, you know, then you can be more confident, copy it, move it to the next module, put the new triggering event in and the new activation date and make it active. And, you know, you get pretty comfortable with it after you've done it a couple of times. And if you make a mistake, tell the students, I'm sorry, I was experimenting with this as a way of trying to help remind you, and I messed up. And, you know, I'll try to be more careful with that in the future. Students generally appreciate that, as long as you apologize for it and, you know, quickly before you get a flood of emails. And, you know, I'm most concerned when I've got 300 to 400 students of making a mistake with one of these, because if 300 or 400 students get emails that were telling them they didn't do work that they shouldn't be getting notified about, it's pretty easy to get overwhelmed by it. And even if you send out a note correcting it, you know, you'll still get that, because not all the students will read your message telling them to ignore that message. That hasn't happened to me in years, but every now and then when Brightspace, well, when Blackboard used to break down and something wasn't working because, you know, there was an attack on Brightspace or something, I'd get a flood of emails and there was no way of notifying them from within Blackboard because it was shut down. And so, you know, I'd say, I'd hear from, you know, 100, 200 or 300 students saying, I know this work is due tonight, but I can't log in. Can you help me with this? And it was really frustrating. You know, I was able to send them eventually through, as long as my As We Go class lists were up, I was able to do it that way, but it was tedious because you're limited to 200 at a time, I think it is, from that. Okay, in any case, but once you create these, you can do all sorts of things with them and try it with different events. And, you know, I have this weekly grade check, which basically is that if their grade falls below a threshold, they get an email asking them to seek some assistance, to talk to me about it. And that's the sort of structure that can make a pretty big difference. So I know we're over time, but any other last question? These were the main things I wanted to focus on. And if you need any help with this, you know, let me know. I'm happy to meet with you over Zoom and walk you through it.
I think you got feedback on your evaluations about using automated reminders.
The students generally said it. One of the things they said is that the course is really, sometimes they said well structured, but it's organized really well. And they say that, you know, they really appreciate the reminders and the checklist. That's the two things they tend to focus on. And it's really easy to find things because it is in that fairly linear fashion. Because with some courses out there, you know, it's sort of like doing a scavenger hunt. And I know some faculty actually will do a scavenger hunt where students have to search out for certain types of things in the course. But if students have to spend their cognitive effort just trying to find things, that may not be the most useful way of having them spend their effort. You know, I'd rather have them struggle with the material than struggle with where to find the material. So.
Thanks, John. I did a big debrief with my students at the end of last semester to ask like what worked well and what they'd recommend changing on the Brightspace page, saying like, I'm new to this, I'm going to be changing it. And mostly they were just like, the structure's great, we appreciate it. But two people mentioned, I have another class where the faculty uses the checklist and we really like that. You might add a checklist. So that was like why I came today. I was like, okay, adding a checklist.
Yeah, the most common comment I got, was, I wish all faculty would use this,
Mhm.
especially with the checklist,
Yeah.
because it's a nice way of reminding them, and using the calendar, having the due dates in there makes it
Yeah.
much easier for students to remember what's due.
Thanks. See you later.
Welcome. Any other last questions? I'll stop the recording. There we go.